All right, so we're going to start getting into these story problems, but I will tell you these next two sections are story problems, but they are not the difficult story problems. Those are yet to come. So I've typed out the steps that you need to do when you are solving story problems. And the first thing you have to do is read the whole problem a couple of times, all the way through, and identify what you're looking for. You have to know what you're looking for before you start. And usually what you're looking for is in the very last sentence. That is why you have to read the whole problem all the way through. The next thing that you're going to do is what we call define the variable. That can be done a couple of different ways. You can just pick a variable and define it. X equals Tom's age would be an example of that. You can also define the variable by making a drawing and labeling it if that is an appropriate way to define your variable. So if it's a geometry problem about a rectangle or a triangle, you can actually just go ahead and draw a picture and label the sides. So you must define your variable. The next thing you have to do is, and this is usually the hardest step, is you have to go ahead and you have to now translate the problem into your equation. So you have to come up with your equation. Take your variables the way that you've defined them and try to come up with an equation. That's the hard part. Once you have your equation, it's easy. Then you solve it. And then you interpret your answer. When you get the answer x equals 8, what is that? Does x equal 8 turtles? Does x equal the age of some fossil? What does x mean? And then you check your solution by saying, does it make sense? Does the answer make sense? That's really the only way to check a story problem. You can't check an answer by plugging it into the equation to seeing if it makes it true, because quite honestly, if you have a problem, if something is wrong, it's probably in the equation that you set up. So your answer could perfectly well check into your equation correctly, but if your equation's wrong, that doesn't it doesn't give you any help in actually finding a mistake. So the best way to do it, it's not foolproof, but the best way to see, does it make sense? If you get that the plane is going 5,382 miles an hour, that probably doesn't make sense. All right, so here we go. We have a few story problems we're going to do. So let's read the whole thing all the way through. 3 times a number subtracted from 2 equals twice the number added to 27. Find the number. So we've read it all the way through. Let's identify what we're looking for. What are we looking for? We're looking for the number. So now it's time to define the variable. Let's use x. What does x stand for? Well, what am I looking for? It stands for the number. I have just defined my variable. Sometimes defining the variable is very boring, but it has to be there. I'm going to be looking for it. So now I'm going to use that variable x and reread the problem and come up with my equation. So let's see. It says 3 times a number subtracted from 2. So that means it's going to be 2 minus 3 times the number, or 2 minus 3x. So this says right here, 3 times the number subtracted from 2 equals twice the number. Well, what does twice mean? It means we're going to multiply that same number, which is x, by 2, added to 27. And there's your equation. So let's go ahead and solve it. Let's go ahead and we'll subtract 2x from both sides. And we're going to get 2 minus 5x equals 27. Since my variables are to the left, I'm going to get rid of this positive 2 by subtracting 2. I'm going to head up here. So negative 5x equals 25. Let's go ahead and divide both sides by negative 5. And we are getting an answer of negative 5. Now, does that make sense? We're looking for a number, so it could be really anything. So it's really hard to check this story problem. But let's interpret our answer. We just found the number. So the number is -5. And that's how we're going to want our answer. Again, this one we were just looking for an answer, for a number. It's pretty boring. Let's look at number 2. 3 times the difference of a number and 5 is the same as twice the number decreased by 3. Find, now I have the numbers here, but I'm thinking it's just number. There's just one number spoken about there. So we're here to find the number. So again, very boringly, let's use x equals the number. That's what we're looking for. So why don't you go ahead and translate number 2 into an equation by pausing the video and then come back and see if you're right. All right, so 3 times the difference of a number and 5 means we're going to take that difference and multiply it by 3. So it has to be in parentheses. Is the same as twice the number decreased by 3. Decreased means you're going to subtract 3 from it. So there's our equation. Hopefully you got the same thing. So here we go to solve. So 3x minus 15 equals 2x minus 3. Let's subtract 2x from both sides of my equal sign, giving me x minus 15 is equal to -3. Add 15 to both sides. And as usual, I'm going to run out of room, and I get x is equal to 12. So again, the interpretation's kind of boring, but it's just going to be the number, because that's what we're looking for, is 12. All right, now we're going to get into something a little bit more interesting here. So let's read this all the way through. So an 18-foot wire is to be cut so that the longer piece is 5 times longer than the shorter piece. Find the length of each piece. So let's go ahead and let's kind of draw a picture of this one. So here's our 18-foot wire. And we know it's divided into a shorter piece and a longer piece. So we could just do something like that. It doesn't really matter where we put the shorter piece and the longer piece. And we know that the total, by the way, is 18 feet. So how are we going to cut this? What does it say? It says the longer piece is 5 times longer than the shorter piece. One of the pieces has to be x. Always something has to be x, just a regular old x. Notice in our first 2 problems, that's all we were looking for, so that was obvious. Here, not so much, but something always has to be x. Well, let's see. It says the longer piece is 5 times longer than the shorter piece. Hopefully you see that that means that the shorter piece is going to be our x. Our longest piece is 5 times that, which would be 5x. So we have just defined our variable. Now it's time to set up an equation. Well, what do we know about these 2 pieces of wire? We know that they total 18x. In other words, we know that when we add them together, we are going to get 18. There's my equation. If we combine like terms and divide by 6, we are going to get x is equal to 3. What did we just find? We found x. What did x represent? X represents the shorter piece. So when we interpret this, we now know that the short piece is 3 feet. But we're not done because it says find the length of each piece. How do I find the longer piece? Well, it's 5 times x, or 5 times 3, which is 15. So the longer piece is 15 feet. So that one was a little more exciting in the interpreting. All right, let's move on. We've got 4 more to do in this section. So let's read number 4 all the way through. Through the year 2020, the state of California has 17 more electoral votes for the president than the state of Texas. If the total electoral votes for these 2 states is 93, find the number of electoral votes for each state. So this isn't really drawing a picture problem, but we do want to find the number of electoral votes for each state. So we're talking about the 2 states. So we're going to say the number for California and the number for Texas. And we are going to have to define each of those numbers. Remember, one of them always has to be X. So let's see what it says. It says the state of California has 17 more votes than the state of Texas. So California has 17 more votes than Texas. Texas is X, and California would be 17 more than that, or 17 plus X. Now we've defined our variables now. Now it's time to set up our equation. What do we know? We know the total for the 2 states is 93, which means if I add the 2 states together, it should equal 93. There's my equation. Let's go ahead and solve. X plus X. 2x plus 17 equals 93. Subtract 17 from both sides. 2x is going to be equal to, let's see, I have to go ahead. It looks like 76. You guys have calculators. Divide by 2, divided by 2. X equals 38. What did I just find? 38 is the number of electoral votes for Texas. It asks us to find the number for each state, so we need both of them. So Texas has 38 votes. California has, well, how am I going to figure that out? I'm going to take my 38 and I'm going to add 17. 55. Votes. And there's the interpretation of our answer. You have to make sure that you're answering the question. All right, let's look at number 5. The second angle of a triangle measures twice as large as the first. If the third angle measures 40 more than the first, find the measures of all 3 angles. So for this one, let's go ahead and let's draw a picture. Here's a triangle. And we're talking about its angle. So let's say that this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one. It really doesn't matter what order. Just label them first, second, and third, because that's what the story problem talks about. And remember, one of them has to be X. So if we go up, it says the second angle of the triangle measures twice as large as the first angle. So second is 2 times the first angle. That tells me that my first angle is X. If my second angle is twice that, it's going to be 2X. The third angle measures 40 degrees more than the first one. So how would I write 40 more than X? Well, that would be X plus 40. Find the measures of all of the 3 angles. Well, they're expecting you to remember something from geometry. Do you remember that in a triangle, all angles add to be 180 degrees? That is a true statement. They expect you to remember that. So now we do. So we have the 3 angles of our triangles. We know that all three add to be 180. There is my equation. X plus 2x plus x plus 40 is equal to 180. Let's combine like terms. We have 1x, 2x, 3x. We have 4x plus 40 equals 180. If I subtract 40 from both sides, I'm going to get 4x is equal to 140. Dividing both sides by 4, I get x equals 35. The story problem says find the measures of all three angles. Now I know x is 35, so I know that the first angle is 35 degrees. What's the second angle? It's 2 times 35. So the second angle is 70 degrees. We're not done. How about the third angle? What is the third angle? Well, it's x, which was 35, plus 40 is 75 degrees. And there we have all three of our angles. All right. So you're going to see 6 and 7 are very similar. And we've kind of worked with these just a very little bit in one of our previous sections. According to this, there are 4 consecutive integers. Now remember, consecutive means one right after the other. The sum of the first and the fourth of these, oops, I'm lost an E there, consecutive integers is 125. Find the integers. So we have to define our variables. Well, what do we have? We have 4 consecutive integers. We have the first integer, we have the second integer, we have the third integer, and we have the fourth integer. And what we know is that they are consecutive integers, one right after the other. What does the first one have to be? The first one has to be x. Now, how do I get to the very next integer? Well, I simply add 1. Doesn't that take me to the next one? And how do I get to the next one? I add 1 to this one, so that's going to be x plus 2. How do I get to the next one? That's going to be x plus 3, and so on, and so on, and so on. But we only need 4. I have defined my variable. Now it's time to set up my equation. What does it say? It says the sum, remember that means add, of the first one and the fourth one is 125. Find the integers. So what am I going to do to the first one and the fourth one? I'm going to add them together. And that equals 125. 2x plus 3 is then 125. If I subtract 3 from both sides, 2x is going to be equal to 122. And last but not least, divide by 2. X is going to be equal to 61. What did I just find? Well, I found my first integer. I need to find all of them. Well, so the integers are, the first one is 61. What's the next one? Well, 61 plus 1. The next one's 62. What's the next one? 63. What's the next one? 64. They're all consecutive integers, so there they are. And finally, the last one in this section. Now, this is similar but very different. This is consecutive even integer. That makes a big difference. So the sum of 3 consecutive even integers is 144. Find the integers. So let's define our variable. So we're going to have, we're going to have the first integer. I'm going to write first here. Let me make this a little bit better. So we're going to have the first even integer. We're going to have the second even integer. And we're going to have the third even integer. And again, what does the first one have to be? It has to be x. Now remember, this is even. So remember, an even number is a number like 4. How do I then get to the next even integer? I don't add 1, I have to add 2. And then how do I get to the next one after that? I have to add 2 more, which means I'm going to have to add 4. So if the first one is an even integer, then I have to add 2 because I'm basically skipping the odd integers. The difference is this one was consecutive integers. It just said one after the other, no even or odd. So there, we've defined our variables. Let's set up our equation. Well, what does it say? It says the sum of all 3 of them is 144. So what am I going to do? I'm going to literally add them all up, and that's going to equal 144. Let's combine like terms. 1x, 2x, 3x plus 2 plus 4 is 6 is equal to 144. If I subtract 6 from both sides, 3x is equal to, that's going to be 138. And if I take 138 and divide by 3, I'm going to have to use a calculator. I'm not able to do that really quickly in my head right now. I'm going to get 46. Plus, I don't want to make a mistake. So what did I just find? I found x. I found that the first even integer is 46. So the integers are 46. What's the next even integer? Well, it's 46 plus 2, or 48. And what's the next even integer? It's 46 plus 4,